I mean, there's nothing sexier than presence. A man who is feet on the ground, chest wide, open heart, and just knows himself enough to just stand in that presence.
So you are the writer and creator of the Substack Touch Me There, which is a serial memoir now being adapted to television. Congratulations.
Thank you.
As women, there's this narrative that we're told that, especially in midlife, we become really disassociated from our desire. We lose that, and we're also no longer desired.
I was divorced from what it meant to be touched in the deepest, most pleasurable ways. He relapsed, he went to rehab, he came home, he relapsed again until one night he took a combination of pills and alcohol that put him into the ER, and that was the breaking point for me. That first MDMA journey was really a chance for me to lay down the shame and the self-blame that I had carried for so long. I stepped into a kind of love for myself and a forgiveness that I've never turned back from. Desire, eros, sensuality is limitless if you know how to capture and expand it.
The theme of today's episode, and really the theme that I've been wanting to tap back into more in my life, is surrender.
Oh.
Welcome to Lost in Translation, the podcast where desire gets decoded. I'm your host, sexologist Natasha Miller, and there's one thing before we begin. If you hit follow wherever you listen to our podcast, it will help us grow and bring you even better guests and conversations. It takes 2 seconds, it's free, and it means the world. Now let's get into it. Juliette LaMontagne, welcome to Lost in Translation.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
It's wild because a year ago to this day, I actually came across your work. So you are the writer and creator of the Substack Touch Me There, which is a serial memoir now being adapted to television. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I was on a flight to Napa, and I know that you're based in Sonoma County, so nearby, which also felt really kismet. And I just felt so inspired by your story because it's about midlife erotic awakening that you experienced yourself. And as women, there's this narrative that we're told that, especially in midlife, we become really disassociated from our desire. We lose that, and we're also no longer desired, right? And I know that that's not true, especially for the women who are so attuned to their sensuality. And you certainly embody that, but it was not always that way for you.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's been a long journey.
Yes, it has. And so I had the honor of interviewing you for my newsletter late last year. And I remember you sharing, you grew up in a Catholic household. You followed all the quote unquote rules. So you got married, you had kids, you built a successful career here in New York City as a teacher and an entrepreneur, designing learning environments to push people beyond their potential, both in the classroom and in the boardroom. So, for all intents and purposes, you were checking all the boxes. You were really doing life right. But behind the scenes, your marriage was unraveling. And I want to start here because this is a story I often hear from couples who are going through the motions and they grow apart. But your story has an added level of complexity. So can you share what was going on behind the scenes?
Sure, yeah. So to contextualize what was going on behind the scenes of my marriage, it makes sense to say I was raised, as you say, Catholic, and there was always a degree of withholding myself because that's how you're trained to be a proper girl in that culture. And you've talked about this a lot in your series about being the one who is desired, not being the one who desires. And in fact, I don't think we ever spoke of pleasure in my home, amongst my friends. There was a certain behavior that was expected, and it was all about securing. I mean, these are the narratives that we are familiar with at this point in our lives, and everybody talks about this kind of thing. But that was me. I really was trying to secure the man, the mate, the acquire all the trappings of success, marriage, children, the career. And I did all of that, but those scripts really left me divorced from my own self. And by that I mean, and this really speaks to the content of Touch Me There, I was divorced from what it meant to be touched in the deepest, most pleasurable ways, which is in the body, in the mind, and in the spirit. So across all of those vectors, I found myself in midlife kind of at a loss. My marriage was a story of passion and intense love in our 20s. My husband and I met in graduate school, and it was wonderful for a very long time. And yet we were playing out some very unhealthy habits. And I found that I was so accommodating in my way that at a certain point I needed to break apart and kind of find myself. And a lot of that manifested in my career decisions and my ambition, which I didn't recognize at the time, but I was really trying to find myself, and career was the way I did it. And that was very threatening to my husband. And we really struggled for a long time.
Ah, the classic story.
Yeah. He has a history of addiction. And although he had been clean and sober for our entire lives and our lives together, that friction, that tension, we were not navigating it well, and it led to a relapse. And that was really the breaking point, where I had been trying to do it all and keep everything together and feeling a lot of dissatisfaction, but doing as we often do, just keep putting one foot in front of the other and hoping it's going to somehow miraculously work out. And it really didn't. And things started to break down when he relapsed. He went to rehab. He came home. He relapsed again. So we were really in a spiral for a period of several years until one night he took a combination of pills and alcohol that put him into the ER. And that was the breaking point for me. I just said, I can't do this anymore. And asked him when he got out of rehab to go to California, which is where his parents and sister live. And we were formally separated for 9 months at that point. And honestly, I thought that was the end of the marriage, full stop.
Right.
At that point, I was so fed up. So we were fully separated, and it wasn't until COVID happened upon us and the rest of the world, and in a state of panic, he said, bring the kids to California. And the New York City chancellor had closed down the public schools. We had 2 teenagers and 3 pets. And I thought, oh God, the world is falling apart. I better go. So we kind of did what people do. We came back together, and that's what really changed the story. Because I think if it weren't for that, if it weren't for COVID, we would probably be divorced, and you and I would not be having this conversation.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Let's be honest, it's really hard to feel sexy when your vagina feels off. If you're bracing for irritation, infections, or another post-sex UTI, it's almost impossible to stay present in the bedroom, and that's why I love Momotaro Apotheca. Their salve is my soothing balm for external irritation when my vulva feels raw from tight clothes, sex, or workouts. It calms the dryness, the itching, that everything feels irritated sensation. And their suppository supports you internally when yeast or discharge feel off. And their UTI supplement is my I've got you for those after sex moments that used to mean a guaranteed UTI. Now, when I know that my vagina is cared for, I show up way more confident and relaxed in bed. If you're interested, you can build your own ritual at momotaroapotheca.com with code LUST for 20% off. So between the time when he moved in with his parents and COVID hit, you were 9 months apart. How did that feel like for you?
I was ready to start a new life. I was, really thinking that this was a chance to do it all again and do it better. I have very different ideas about what would have happened. But yeah, I was unafraid, as I am. I mean, I tend to be that way, ready for a fresh start, always up for a challenge. And certainly it was going to be a huge disruption to our family structure and to my children. But that aside, for myself personally, I thought, new world.
Did you feel yourself tapping back into your desire, or were you still in that like healing phase where you're just so exhausted that you're giving yourself time to breathe?
That I was exhausted, and my nervous system, I mean, for all of those years that I had been both in that accommodating, trying to always make up for something that I wasn't quite sure what I was even making up for, that feeling of dissatisfaction, and then the years where he was cycling through relapse. I mean, it was so stressful that, yeah, it was very much like, okay, let me just catch my breath. Let me recover. Let me restore. I also at that time started attending Al-Anon, which is a 12-step meeting, and the kind of the complementary component to AA 12-step meetings. So I really started to understand my role in the dysfunction of our marriage, how I had been complicit, and how I could set the path of recovery for my whole family by first taking accountability for myself. And I really emphasize that as the first step in all of the crazy things that I've done and all of the journey of healing that I've been through. It really is the radical accountability that comes from programs like that. It doesn't have to be through a 12-step program,
Right.
but certainly a great vehicle for saying, this didn't happen to me. This is an opportunity for me to learn. And in order to do that, I have to take responsibility for myself.
Yeah, that accountability can be really hard to face.
Yeah.
Yeah. So COVID hits, you fly with your kids and your 3 pets. I didn't know that there were 3 pets as well, to Sonoma County, which sounds like actually a really nice place to quarantine.
Absolutely.
And when you
Very
arrive,
privileged.
you are faced with a new man. Like, your husband is not only committed to the 12-step program, but it's become a lifestyle, which is new. And that brings up a lot of questions, namely, is there an opportunity here for us to get back together? But you take it slowly, right? And you start with some lighter healing modalities like Reiki, but eventually you decide to step into psychedelic-assisted treatments. And you start with ketamine. What did that open up for you?
The word that each psychedelic has its own signature. And for me, ketamine was such a surrender.
Right.
The 12-step program is very much about like surrendering to a higher power. Often people in Al-Anon say that their addiction is control. And I would agree with that I was trying to always control for the outcomes and manage the situation. And it makes you crazy. So you have to kind of turn that over, and it's so freeing. I mean, it's the thing you resist the most, and yet it's the thing that frees you ultimately. So ketamine was like a deeper dive into that feeling of surrender. And when you are in a medicine of this sort, which at high doses, which is how it's done therapeutically, you are not in your body. You are divorced from your ego. You really have to kind of turn everything over. You don't know what reality is. And there's more. It's of course hard to describe, but the secondary effect of that, I'm making it sound like it's a conscious thing.
And it's obviously it's not. It's felt.
It's felt, and you come back to this reality, and you say, oh, there's something very other going on here. It's not just this material reality that we're engaging with. There's something more. At least that was my belief. Maybe
Right.
not everybody has that experience, but that was my entree to psychedelics. And I definitely have ever after saw everything in my lived experience as something very other.
I think what struck me in your writing was when you mentioned how going through this ketamine-assisted treatment, you realized that there is a difference between living in remission and living in recovery, right? Because your husband, even though he was sober for, a large part of your marriage, he believed that AA wasn't for him. And so, like many former addicts, they end up channeling that intense energy into other drug-free addictions of high adrenaline, right? And that can show up in the form of sports, work, relationships, even sex. But what happens is that when you're in that period of remission, you never know when there's going to be a relapse. And like you mentioned, that can create this constant tension in your body when you're trying to control everything. And I thought that was a really beautiful realization that you had in that ketamine experience.
Yeah, I did not know what I did not know back then. And I would have told you my husband is sober, which he was. But it is really the lack of accountability. So the same thing I was saying is true for the Al-Anon program, taking accountability for my part. He had to learn how to take accountability for himself, because one of the things the addict likes to do is blame, is to push everything onto somebody else. It's never their problem. They are the victim. So in addition to, yes, thrill seeking and all of that kind of behavior, it was very much about blaming other people. And so again, at the time, couldn't see it, but seeing him in recovery, seeing him in his integrity, seeing him take radical responsibility for himself, that was a different man.
And eventually you decide to try MDMA assisted therapy. I've done that plenty in my 20s.
Yeah.
So I always joke that I don't think I'd ever be able to microdose it because I've macrodosed it enough. It's been some time since I've done it. And I actually have a really hard time being open to psychedelic assisted treatments because of that surrender that comes with it, that I no longer feel like I'm able to tap back into, because it reminds me of a time when the partying was in a way degenerate, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I love reading your story, navigating all of these different treatments. It's so beautiful to see. But so you end up doing MDMA, and that is in contrast to obviously your ketamine experience. What happened there?
Well, first, I want to say that to encourage you to try again, people who guide psychedelic journeys will talk about the container, that it has everything to do with the set and setting that you enter into when taking the drug. So I think, at least in my case and what I've heard other people saying, taking MDMA at a rave is not the same as taking MDMA in a therapeutic environment. And everything that goes with it, everything from the way the room is set up to setting your intentions to the trusted relationship with this guide. It was profound for me. It was such a gift. It's hard to reduce an entire experience, which often lasts many, many hours, to a single thing. But I would say at least that first MDMA journey was really a chance for me to lay down the shame and the self-blame that I had carried for so long. I mean, so many women I think I think we all carry shame.
Right.
But I had such a tremendous amount of shame. And I stepped into a kind of love for myself and a forgiveness that I've never turned back from. That single journey just turned a page for me. And there was also something, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. There was something about being in relationship to an older woman who has that kind of wisdom and guidance that just healed me. Yeah, that's how profound it was. It's just not that common in most of our modern lives to sit at the feet of our elders and take in their wisdom and be seen by them and held by them in that way. So it was a pivotal moment for me.
So within the first year that you were in California, this was happening, and then there's this scene that you share that you're at the grocery store with your husband and he brings up couples therapy, and your body just closes because you've already done that.
For years. For decades.
You were over it.
Ugh.
But what made this experience different was that you also did it assisted with psychedelics. So you take ketamine and your husband takes psilocybin, which for those of you who might be listening and thinking, well, he's a former drug addict, like why would he do that? This was discussed and understood, like extremely low risk of addiction, and then it's also microdosed, so it was safe.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful story that you share about that session, because you were able to melt away the resentment that you had for each other and really turn a page in your marriage. What happened behind those closed doors?
Well, just to clarify, I did also take a little MDMA at that time,
Okay.
and the ketamine was a very low dose. Okay. So the previous experience where I talked about that dissociative kind of being in the cosmos, that's a very high dose. It behaves very differently at low dose. I would say that in that experience together, I came to recognize, and really credit to our guide who facilitated this conversation between us, that each of us comes here to planet Earth for a brief moment, and it's like a school. And the relationships in your lives, the experiences of your life are the curriculum. And if you don't learn the lessons of the curriculum that you're in, you're going to have to repeat the grade. We see it all the time. People leave marriages, they leave relationships, and then they play out the same issues in their next relationship. Mm-hmm. So given the fact that we had an incredible, there was just there remained such love and adoration for each other at the heart of it, like clear away all the history and all the stuff, right, all the weight that we'd layered onto ourselves and then us as a couple through the years. There was really just like a friendship and a admiration for each other. And yes, there was still a lot that we needed to work through, but were we going to do it with each other, or were we going to move on and start all over and play it out with somebody else? So I think at that moment it became clear that we made a decision to work it through together. Now, that doesn't mean your body wants to come along on that journey. You can tell yourself that in your mind, yeah, and feel it in that moment, but it's a lot more difficult to get your body online with that decision when it's like been kind of locked up and guarded and armored as mine had been for so long.
Yeah, and that's what I felt from that experience that you wrote about, is you're voicing like, I could have walked away, I could have left you and not done this. And he's agreeing with you, which starts to de-armor you, yeah, right? And then there is a moment when he said, okay, but if you don't want to come along with me anymore, I am done, mm-hmm, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is like a moment of realization for you to understand which path you're going to take from here on out. And also, to what you mentioned, Osha, the therapist, had said, like, often we stay in relationships because we feel like we haven't learned all of the lessons that we need to. Do you feel like there are more lessons for you to learn here? Mm-hmm. Which I thought was so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And just the answer was yes for both of us. So, yeah.
So from there, you end up working with a sexological body worker named, mm-hmm, Robin. Mm-hmm. Now, for those who don't know, sexological body workers are practitioners who use one-way touch, as in only they are able to touch their clients, to help cultivate their clients' erotic well-being and intelligence. Mm-hmm. What made you come across this work, mm-hmm, and mm-hmm, what called you to it?
I always say that the psychedelics, and I don't want to overemphasize psychedelics like this is the only path, because there's so many.
It's such an important part of your journey, though, mm-hmm, and I think it's written in a way that has been so illuminating for your experience, and it's so central to it that I do want to honor that.
Okay, yeah. In short, the psychedelics really helped my nervous system to calm down. And when your nervous system can rev down, all kinds of other things have room to move in. And I very clearly was like feeling myself, my eros, my sensuality coming back online after starting these psychedelic experiences. And at first it was confusing, and I didn't know exactly what it was that I was even experiencing or what to do with it. But it was clearly a force. I felt lit up. I felt like, and not just erotically, but sensually, like everything felt amplified because I was no longer in fight or flight. And so it was really a desire to better understand and get to know what was happening in me that I started seeking out sex, going online and Googling as one does, like midlife. And also, to be fair, I was also starting to take hormone replacement therapy. So I was just feeling better in myself, in my body. So everything was coming back online, and I'm like trying to figure out, like, what is this and how do you work with this?
At this stage, you're in your late 40s.
I was in my, late 40s. Okay. Yeah.
So you start taking hormone replacement therapy, you're open to new experiences, and you decide to work with Robin. Where did you two start?
Breathwork.
Breathwork.
Just bringing the breath into the different chakras of the body, which is just to say, moving the breath through the body and letting it enliven you. Becoming familiar with the breath and breathing and sound, and how powerful making sounds in your throat can be to move and enliven sexual energy, life force energy. These sexological body workers are really working with life force energy. It takes the form of sexual touch, but not always, but it's really moving that particular life force energy. Yeah.
After a few sessions, you end up working on de-armouring your genitals. And I think for a lot of people here, they don't understand what de-armouring in this context is. And it's the way that you describe how she touched you can be shocking for some people, but I think it's such an important part of being able to let go and allow a trusted practitioner to help heal you. So what was that process like?
So I'll talk about vulva mapping, which is one of the practices that I experienced and is not uncommon in sexological bodywork. Our sex organs as women hold so much of our history, of our tensions, of our traumas. There's so much heat in there. And I would say it's an exploratory experience where she is using her hands inside your vulva in the most delicate, slow, incredibly intentional way. So this is not stroking, or it's certainly not aimed at arousal. You're exploring the inner landscape.
Okay.
And she's moving so slowly, and you're talking it through. And so, for example, there were places where I would feel like, oh, that does not feel good. It wasn't painful, but just like so sensitive that it was almost beyond tolerance. And she would hold there ever, ever, ever so delicately and say, breathe here. And then like add the tiniest bit of pressure. And slowly, like over several minutes, just holding pressure in a single spot that initially had been so tight and so, whether it was scar tissue or whatever, like who knows what's going on in that cavern.
Yes.
She was discovering things. I was discovering things. We're talking it through. We're breathing it through. And then something released. And suddenly that same spot becomes filled with pleasure, filled with sensation. And something else entirely comes online. And you're like, that's amazing. How did that happen? It's worth pointing out that I am lucky that I don't have sexual trauma, but so many people have sexual trauma that they're trying to recover from. And this is a way of going into it rather than avoiding it or pretending it doesn't happen. Like there are histories in there. She said to me at one point that going into the vulva is like opening a box of old photographs.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
The next step that you write about is orgasmic meditation.
So it is a meditation practice in which there is a set protocol and a pair, a stroker and a strokee. Usually a man is the stroker and a strokee is the woman. And it's a practice where you set up in a particular way. They call it the nest. You spread your legs. It's very precise. Okay. It's very precise, which is kind of nice because people like when you're doing something new and different, they kind of like rules and structure. So they set it up really beautifully to say, this is how you set up the body. The woman lies down, reclining with pillows beneath both legs, spread legs. The stroker sits to the side, kind of cups the hand over the vulva to say, like, are you ready to start? And then for exactly 15 minutes by the clock, the stroker will stroke the clitoris of the woman at the 1 o'clock spot on the clitoris with a particular like angle to the finger. Like, it's all so precise. It's almost hilarious. But again, like, it can be really helpful for people. And what's really important to emphasize is that orgasm is not the goal. It's really about coming into intense focus. So having experienced it, it is, this, like, you're so focused in on the sensation alone. You have no responsibility for the stroker. You have no responsibility for what they're thinking or feeling, or if they're comfortable or enjoying it, or
which can be really hard,
yeah,
especially in the way that we're socialized as women, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, that's part of the whole thing about sexological bodywork is it's one-way touch. You learn to divorce yourself from the worry of the other person's experience. And it's a training. It's a somatic training. It's not just in your head. Yeah. You have to feel into it through your body.
Incredible.
So my first experience with orgasmic meditation was like, that feeling of like, wait, I'm on the way. I'm close. I don't want to back off now.
Robin was the one doing it. Yes.
Right. And yet that's not the point. It's like, okay, and she would coach me to breathe and use that same energy that's swelling in one particular place in the body, and to use the breath to expand it. And this was her whole thing, is that like desire, eros, sensuality is limitless if you know how to capture and expand it. So rather than keeping it pulled there and going to climax, using the breath to expand the sensation outward till you're tingling in your fingertips and in the tips of your toes. It's a sensual experience like none I'd ever had.
So it's a different form of orgasm, so to speak.
Yeah.
Than what we generally associate with like that peak climax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you mind me asking? I mean, I know that every experience is going to be different, but from that first experience that you had, how long did that tingling last?
Oh, I remember coming out of, so the way she works is you like kind of a massage table studio situation. There's an office area and then a massage area. So after the session, she kind of lowers the music and leaves you to kind of come back to base and waits for you in the next room. And I just remember like floating out of the room and just feeling like I was in another dimension. I couldn't believe that my body could even do that.
Yes. Yeah. So the context that I had heard orgasmic meditation through was through self-pleasure, but as you're going through it, you are breathing and bringing that energy through all of your 7 chakras, which are your energy centers along the spine, and just how the end result is exactly what you've described it to be, but that you do it to yourself.
Sure. Yes. I mean, why not?
Yeah.
If you can. However, there's something very important in the lesson of having to surrender to someone else's control.
Absolutely.
You're not driving the car. So there's something to that too.
I love that. Mm-hmm. So at some point, Robin's doing all this one-way touch, and she's like, listen, you're ready to have a partner to do this with, right? You need two-way touch here.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be with me.
Right.
And you're like, well, who the heck am I do this with? Because even though you're cohabitating with your husband and you're slowly peeling back the layers, you're still not
open
to that. And she introduces you to the Wheel of Consent by Dr. Betty Martin.
Betty Martin designed this way of touching one another that sounds terribly contrived, kind of like orgasmic meditation does, but it's so powerful. There are 4 quadrants in the wheel of consent, and one is, or one side of the wheel is serving and accepting touch, which sounds pretty straightforward. I touch you, I offer you this touch, and you accept the touch. But in that, you have to be willing to ask for what you want. I can't serve you anything that you haven't asked for. And in fact, to do so would be an impingement of what I want onto you. So there are these exercises in getting really clear and clean about who's touching whom, which direction is the energy moving, and what's going on behind it, right? So I can make all kinds of assumptions about what I think you want and think that I'm serving you the most pleasurable touch. But the most pleasurable touch may be something very different. So, and are you willing to even ask for what you want? So there are all these challenges in learning to serve touch and learning to accept what you've asked for being served by another. So it's kind of the first round of learnings in the Wheel of Consent.
Yeah, I'd say that the work really does come in through that negotiation, boundary setting, and reiterating what it is that you want, and also feeling very comfortable taking, which we haven't gotten to yet.
Right.
In that.
Right.
Do you want to share?
Sure. So I mean, let me just, I'll bring it to life in an example. So this is because it's easier to start on the serving, accepting side of the wheel.
Yes.
This is where my husband and I started. And I really it was difficult for me to accept his touch after everything we'd been through and kind of our history at that point. It, from what started as such a beautiful, enmeshed passion, just got to feel so overwhelming and needy to me over time that I really kind of had these walls and barriers up. So it started with me asking for him to serve and me to accept, which I'd already been learning about accepting through the sexological bodywork and getting better about, separating from, I wonder if this is okay for him.
Which is huge, by the way.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a big step. But so in this first exercise, really all I could do was say, can you lay your hands on my feet? And that was it. Not a foot massage. I just had to tell my body that it was okay and I could accept the touch of his hands on my feet.
And you were wearing socks, by the way.
I was wearing socks. I mean, this is how tame and lame our entry-level touch work was, but it was a start.
And there's a time constraint. It starts with 3 minutes for each.
It could be 1 minute. It's whatever you negotiate.
Sure.
But that's how we started. And then when you reverse it and he asks to be served in a particular way, I have to check in with myself because I'm such an overserver historically. Let me just do whatever the thing is that somebody needs, regardless of what I feel about that service.
Right.
I have to check in with myself. Can I give the gift of this touch with an open heart? And that's also the work, right? Because we rush to please and just, sure, I can just do that. Why not? It's going to make you happy. But it's not the same as doing it with an open heart and a generous spirit.
Absolutely.
So
and he got spicier because he asked for a back massage, right? You asked for the hands on the feet and
Yeah, he's always been more comfortable asking for what he wants. But it gets really spicy when you switch to the other side of the quadrants, which is the take and allow. And so it wasn't until after quite some time, and we've been kind of doing this work and others to find our way to this play, really. I think of it as play of the take and the allow, which is, what is it that's going to give me pleasure when I touch you? So the energy is, the gift is mine. The energy is something I'm taking from you. It's going to give me pleasure to touch you in this particular way. But of course I have to ask and get your consent. So that's a whole nother layer of work that was so powerful, both because I came to see my husband in his strength and in his integrity, asking for what he wanted to take, not because he was an empty cup, the hungry ghost
You
of
were no
addiction.
longer managing him, right?
Yeah, it was just this like pure, a very different style of relating and desire that I was seeing from him in that take. And so, yes, I was willing to allow. And that's a beautiful thing, a beautiful thing. And I think the take and the allow has so much potential to heal us, because it's often where we get to ask for things once you've established trust and you're kind of you've started to push the boundaries of things. You start to ask for things that perhaps you've always been ashamed of. And in fact, in your last podcast, in your conversation, I can't remember her name,
Carly Pfeiffer.
Yes, and she talked about writing about or having your partner focus on those things that you're most ashamed of about your body. In the example you just gave about like you've never looked at your vulva, maybe because you never wanted to look at your vulva and you feel ashamed or embarrassed of it. That's an opportunity to have someone look at your vulva and really shine a light on that shadow of you, whether it's shame, embarrassment, it's like some desire that you've always kept hidden. Whatever it is, like this is a sandbox for us to play with all of those kind of darker aspects of our psyche, really.
That's really powerful.
That's the power of this work. I mean, it just goes on, and it can be so tame. Like I've always wanted to, run my fingers through your hair in a particular way, and I've never thought to ask you that, and you allow it, and suddenly like something breaks through. Or it can be something quite spicy. And obviously the consent, and there's a lot of talk of consent in the BDSM world, and it's not unlike that. But I want people to understand that it's so much more approachable than perhaps this notion of like bondage or chains or
totally
kink.
And in fact, one of the examples that you give, the dark side of take, is that we've generally associated that so much with like sexual assault,
totally
non-consensual touch.
Right.
But because it's called the wheel of consent and it is consensual, there is so much freedom within that.
It needs a rebrand, because whenever you say consent, it sounds like we're mitigating some risk, and we're trying to manage for a potential lawsuit or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, no, we're trying to step into the areas that are ripe for disruption, that want to grow and stretch, that want to find their way to the light. These are real opportunities.
Yeah. And what I love about this story of the wheel of consent in your life is that this is where you really start to get to know your husband and see him in a new light and connect erotically with him, which I think can break a lot of understandings where people are like, well, when you want to spice things up, you're going to bring in the whips and the chains.
And the lingerie.
Yes. And the play parties, right? Yeah. Which can all be great.
Sure.
But there is a way in which you can actually rebuild your sex life through touch and negotiation and consent.
It's totally different than the template of early love and merging and the passion and it sounds so contrived, these exercises, but they are so erotic, and they can be really transcendent in many cases. And it's because you're going so deep in yourself in this turn-taking. And that's not to say that that's the only kind of sexual engagement you can have with your partner. It's just an exercise. It's just an opportunity to
of course,
focus on as you would in the gym, like focus on a core strength. And then sure, you can have all kinds of other play that takes unstructured form, but it's a great way to go deeper.
There's this great scene that you mentioned where your husband really stands his ground.
I mean, there's nothing sexier than presence. A man who is feet on the ground, chest wide, open heart, and just knows himself enough to just stand in that presence, not groping or grabbing or expecting. It comes first from integrity and self-knowledge. So I really don't, if he hadn't done all of the work that he did for himself, by himself, we would not be relating this way together as a couple.
And in that, there was a moment when he told you, wait, which is so hot.
It's so hot. Again, it's not about the lingerie or the whips and chains. It's about playing with power. As a woman who has had a lot of professional success and held a lot of power in my life, sometimes it's incredibly hot to feel someone else is a bigger, more powerful container than you. And in fact, it is that very container, if you will, that masculine presence, when felt in your body, allows you to really just relax and flow in a different way. All those women who are listening and feel like they're driving the car of their sexual experiences with their husband would do well to shift the dynamic and really kind of step out of the driver's seat and allow.
I love that. And for anyone who's curious about the Wheel of Consent, I'll link it in the show notes for you to learn more about it. How long did it take from that first time that you did it with your husband until the moment where you really start feeling that tangible erotic connection through the Wheel of Consent? Do you remember how long it took?
Gosh, I don't know exactly, but I mean, you know, it's like most things. It's like slow, leap. You know, I think that like there was some very tame laddering up exercises, and then like you have one session where maybe it was the take session where he gave me the weight for the first time. I don't know exactly, but that's a step change. That's not just like, you know, a slow incremental slope. Like there were some big moments where we leapt forward, and suddenly I felt like I was seeing him anew and seeing us anew.
That makes sense. It's a lot like the J curve that we talk about with like success. You know, it starts slowly and then at one point it becomes exponential. Yeah. You're going through this whole experience, peeling back the layers. At some point you decide to go to an all-woman sex retreat alone. That's called Back to the Body. And what called you to it? And how was there a negotiation with your husband about that, or was he just like, you go do you?
You know, he has been so supportive, to his credit, writing about us and having these weird, wacky experiences. He's been very supportive. I felt like I wanted to experience the touch of another man, to feel myself surrender in a particular way with someone who was not my husband. I don't know, something called to me about it, and I can't exactly explain what it was, but it was something I felt I needed to do. I spent a week in the middle of nowhere in Colorado in this ranch, and every day you had a hands-on session for several hours with a male practitioner. You could opt for a female if that was your choice. But yeah, I worked with this practitioner. And
Nathan.
Yes. And it was really, it was quite eye-opening. I would say that what I learned about myself, it's always, of course, it's an inside job. Pleasure is an inside job. It's not like anybody is going to touch you in a particular way that you can't access on your own. And what I realized is, like many of us, I really rely on the psychological components of eroticism. And the fact that it was really just me and I couldn't engage, there was no narrative, no play in which I could use my mind to play the coquette, to, you know, there was just none of that.
But you did mention that, like, you had a split second there where you felt like you felt that coming in.
Totally.
And then you're like, wait, I'm not here for that.
That's how we're trained. Yeah. We're trained to be the desirous one. Yeah. I mean, the desired one. So yeah, here I was with a strange man. I better woo him into thinking something or other of me. It's like, no, wait, that's not what I'm here for. And I think I learned in the end that, like, I really do need a relationship to the person to feel my highest, most erotic self. So I don't think it was my most, the height of my erotic experiences were not in that room. But I will say the experience was so meaningful for the women that I met there. Just these incredible women from all walks of life who, as I mentioned earlier, are taking on their trauma, taking on the things that have them stuck in their lives, feeling less than alive, and just going straight into it fearlessly. And it really just was so brave. I admired them so much and felt such a kinship.
Yeah, but I will say the act of allowing a man to touch you is also very brave, because I was reflecting on, if I would want this for myself. And I think that at this stage of my life, imagining a man do this work, which it's not about, this is so different from having a sexual experience with another person, right? Like this almost feels so much more intimate. And so the thought of it not being with my husband feels like I'm not ready for that yet, right?
Yeah.
And so, that was one of my questions of like, how did that feel for you? What did it open up for you, if anything?
I think it gave me greater appreciation of my own husband. And like, he's a great lover. And that was never the issue. It was the energy between us and the dysfunction of our relationship and our dysfunctional coping mechanisms for so many years. So it was enjoyable, but it taught me more about my own husband than about anything else.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, one of the experiences that you did have there was shibari.
Mm-hmm.
It was your first time.
Oh, yeah.
I recently did a lighter version at Esther Perel's live sessions last week. We were fully clothed, and it was just our upper body. But that turned a page in my life. And now I'm in the process of, my husband and I are going to work with a practitioner to teach us how to do shibari. But can you share more about what that experience was like for you?
So for people who don't know what shibari is,
Yes, sorry.
it is it's an artistic rope bondage practice. And I emphasize the word artistic because it is quite beautiful and geometric in its design, and it binds the body with this contrast between the tension of the ropes and the soft, bulging flesh. So it's both beautiful. It's a process that takes time. So there's like this building tension when a practitioner is binding you in the ropes, and you feel yourself increasingly drawn in. So there's this like build up, but ultimately it's just the feeling of total, again, that word, surrender, the turning over of control to another. And it's like a release. I don't know how you experienced it, but I felt it as a release.
I felt it as, yes, both a surrender and a release, and that total trust in the person that was, guiding me through it. And it was so beautiful and not at all what I expected it to be. And I think the theme of today's episode, and really the theme that I've been wanting to tap back into more in my life, is surrender. And I find that to be really hard, and I get almost emotional talking about it, because as I build this business, and it's so funny because I work with sex, right? And so I think there's this understanding that it's like, I am always very sexual with my husband, and we are very attuned to each other, and we have a lot of affection, and I think that maintains a constant erotic energy. But the being unable to let go of control over what I'm building and taking it very seriously has been something that I've been reflecting on a lot, because it's so antithetical to what I preach, and just how hard it is to practice that when you feel like you are in a state of survival mode, right? So it's just, it makes you have so much respect when you're able to actually practice that consistently, right? And you cherish it so much when you do finally experience that, which I think is what my experience with Shibari last week brought on. I don't mean to get so emotional sharing this, but it was this whole conversation that I had with my husband afterwards, where I was like, yeah, I feel like I've been unable to surrender.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
And that's been, yeah, really beautiful to be aware of, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that there are these modalities that help us to release in that particular somatic way, right? It's one thing when we tell ourselves in our mind, we need to let it go, we need to, leave the office behind. But it's quite another when you have the whole body held by someone's touch, someone's container, whether it's ropes or something else.
And that word container, and sometimes it is in that container of a new practice where you can really reconnect with yourself, right? So in that, what I've noticed is that just our bedroom, as safe as it is at this moment of my life, does not provide me with that kind of container. So I learned that I need to look elsewhere. It's been really soothing to hear from my husband that he's on board with that and wants to be with me through this process. So
yeah.
Well, I want to end with a curiosity that I've always had. Why did you name your Substack Touch Me There?
Well, I think it really speaks to all of the work, all of the modalities that touch us not just in our physical bodies, but in our minds and in our hearts and in our spirits. And in particular, at this moment in the history of the world, we need these sensuous, sensual, embodied experiences. So Touch Me There is really about becoming awake and alive to our lives in an increasingly automated, dissociated, disconnected world. That's my mission with the work, with the writing, with now the series script, which is
so exciting.
Fictional, so it's kind of a different telling of the same story. But I really want to help people to come back into their bodies, and not just sexually, but in this very sensual way that reminds us that we're humans and we can't lose sight of that in this increasingly high-tech world.
So well said. I'm so excited for everything that you're building.
Thank you.
And the knowledge that you're imparting on us through your personal lived experience and inspiring so many more people to explore and pursue and reconnect with these deeper parts of themselves. Thank you so much for your work. And
Thank you.
I'm so excited for the television adaptation.
Thank you. Me too.
Everyone, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. If you want to read Juliette's serial memoir, Touch Me There, it's on Substack. I'm linking it in the show notes. I highly recommend binging on it. It is phenomenal. And is there anywhere else that people can stay in touch with you?
Touch Me There Media on Instagram and TikTok.
Perfect. Thank you for listening to Less Than Translation. If you enjoyed this, please hit follow wherever you listen and leave a review. It helps more people find us and it means everything. See you next week.